Good morning. Good morning, my friends. Thank you so much for coming to spend your Tuesday, July 23rd with me, 2024. Today is day one of the Ashley Benefield trial out of Manatee County, Florida. The courthouse is in Bradenton. We are not that far apart. We are not that far behind. It just started about 20 minutes ago. So this way we'll be able to fast forward through any breaks or any sidebars or anything that's going to impede our ability to move quickly about the cabin. I'm just going, for those of you who are not familiar with this case, give you a quick rundown. This is a case that can be triggering for a lot of people. So I'm just going to put that warning out there as a general warning. The subject matter is not easy. And this is the case of Ashley Benefield. Give you a quick rundown. Some people don't know what it's about, so I'll give you a quick rundown. Ashley Benefield was 24 years old when she met Doug Benefield, who was 54 years old. They met in Palm Beach, Florida at the home of Dr. Ben Carson in 2016, shortly after Dr. Ben Carson left the presidential race. Maybe some of you remember all the way back to 2016. They were married within 13 days. Ashley had been a former ballerina, and she wanted to start her own ballet company. And she and Doug started that ballet company, which quickly fell apart. At some point, Doug reversed his vasectomy. He had a 15-year-old daughter at the time. He was widowed 9 months prior to meeting Ashley. And Ashley became pregnant. Soon after Ashley became pregnant, she left Doug and went to live with her mother in Florida. They were living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. They reconciled on and off for a little while, a couple years. Let's wait and see what the evidence shows. And on September 27th of 2020, Ashley shot Doug. He died, and she is now claiming self-defense. She's now claiming protection under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, and she is going to use a battered spouse defense. And so there's a lot to it. And I was, when we went over it the other night, I was saying, let's go into this like jurors and let's see what's allowed, what evidence is allowed in for the jury. And let's kind of reserve judgment until we understand a little bit more about what was going on in the dynamic of their relationship, what kind of proceedings were happening around this time. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And just one thing that I want to point out is that a lot of people are saying online that there was a custody hearing that was a couple of days after the shooting, and that is not accurate. There was a hearing on the docket for an order of protection that Ashley was seeking against Doug. So that's what was pending. It was not a custody proceeding. And I think that needs to be cleared up. I looked at the court docket. So I'm a lawyer. That's what we do here. We stop, we rewind, we talk about the testimony. So it's going to be interrupted. If you don't like that, then this might not be the place for you to watch the coverage. But if you want to go watch it on Law and Crime or Court TV, good luck to you in the chat there. This is an amazing chat. I have the best moderators on YouTube. And so we don't tolerate any trash talk, any bullying, any defamatory or just rude comments about the witnesses' looks, body shaming, stuff like that. You can talk about their testimony, you can talk about their demeanor, but we just don't appreciate the personal attacks on people that are either witnesses in this case or the judge or the attorneys. And that's the way we do it here. So welcome. We are a few minutes behind. This is Judge Matt White out of Manatee County, Florida. The courthouse is in Bradenton. I think Jules was going to court today. I don't know if she got in. I didn't hear from her, but if she did get into the courtroom, she will likely email me with updates. The jury is allowed to take notes during this trial, and the judge has instructed them before the opening statements began that, if they need another pad, they've got plenty of pads, they've got plenty of pens, and that after the trial, those notes are going to be destroyed, which is different, I believe, than in the Karen Reed case in Massachusetts. I believe those notes became part of the court record. I'm not sure. I don't know if they were destroyed, but Judge Matt White has said that these notes will be destroyed. These are your notes. They're your personal notes. and we're going to destroy them. That is where we stand. I gained the volume up a little bit on Court TV. I also have a closed captionings on for you. This trial is supposed to last, good morning, that girl in the car, for a week, about 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer than 2 weeks. So we'll see. We'll see how long it goes. However long it goes, we're here. All right. That said, let us get into opening statements. I skipped through the initial jury instructions, and the prosecution is opening first. All right, everybody ready? No spoilers, no spoilers. No, Nosy Rosie, I did wonder that too, but the judge did not specifically state. Nosy Rosie says, not a spoiler, but kind of reflecting. I'm not sure if the judge is allowing questions like in the Maya case. He did not say that in his initial instructions to the jury. And so I'm going to say no. The difference between this case and the Maya case is that the Maya case was a civil case. And so maybe the rules in Florida are different. In civil cases, the other difference here is that it's a 6-person jury. It's a 6-person jury in a criminal case, which is unusual. Usually it's 12. Jurisdictions vary, but here we only have 6 jurors and 3 alternates. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go to court. Let me know that you can hear it okay. There's not a whole lot I can do about the volume, but I'll do my best for you. I think it's okay. You let me know. Ready, set, go.
The attorneys will now have the opportunity to make an opening statement to you. Please remember that what the attorneys say is not evidence and should not be considered by you as evidence. However, it is important to listen, as this is their chance to tell you what they believe the evidence will be in this case. State.
This is the state of Florida. That is Ashley Benefield, the defendant. She's now 32 years old.
This case is about a woman who very early on in her pregnancy decided she wanted to be a single mother. And she did not want the father of this child to have any visitation, her husband. And everything she did from that point on was to attain that goal. And she would stop at nothing to attain that goal. She tried several things in the system that you'll hear. The courts, law enforcement, Department of Children and Families, no one got on her side. And at the end, when there was no other option, she shoots him and kills him and claims self-defense. Now, this couple, Doug Benefield and Ashley Benefield, were married. They had moved to Florida from South Carolina. They lived together in South Carolina. Now, when they lived down here in Florida, in Bradenton, they did not live together. Obviously, there were issues. Doug Benefield lived in his own apartment. Ashley Benefield lived with her mother, Alicia Byers, in a home with their daughter once she gave birth. She had this daughter who at the time was a toddler when she shot Doug. While they were living separate, they were still.
Did you just say she had this daughter? This daughter? Can we not name the child? Hold on a second. This is what we do. We stop, we rewind. Hold on. That might not play well with the jury.
Alicia Byers in a home with their daughter once she gave birth. She had this daughter who at the time was a toddler when she shot Doug. While they were living separate, they were still interacting with each other with the goal, the apparent goal of seeking reconciliation, reconciling this family and becoming a family. They were going to restaurants. They were going to Selby Gardens. They were hanging out at the pool at Doug Benefield's apartment complex. By all images, they looked like they were trying to reconcile. The problem was that is not what Ashley Benefield wanted. Although that's what she was portraying, that's not what she wanted. At the time that this shooting happened, they were planning to move to Maryland. Ashley's mother had inherited a home in Maryland, and they were going to move to Maryland. Doug was also going to move to Maryland. They were going to continue to live separate and continue to attempt to reconcile, but they were all going to move to Maryland together. Excuse me. At the time that this happened, everybody was in moving mode. There were boxes everywhere, furniture, beds upended. They had a U-Haul that they were using together. They had a pod that was in the defendant's driveway that they were putting all of their things into. And every day around this time, Doug Benefield was going to Ashley's home to assist her in putting these things into the pod, putting these things into the U-Haul, because the plan was that they were all going to pack up in the next few days and move to Maryland and continue to try and work on their relationship. The problem was Ashley Benefield knew that this was a ruse. She didn't intend to reconcile. She didn't intend to try to make this work. And the problem was there was a court hearing on September 30th of 2020. And at that court hearing, all of this was going to come out. It was going to come out that she was acting one way when she was by herself, and she was acting another way when she was with Doug Benefield. That she was telling him she wanted to work on things, that she wanted to get this marriage back together. But yet when separate, she was saying she had absolutely no intention of reconciling, did not want him around, and did not want this to work. On the 30th of September, this was going to come out. On the 27th of September, she shoots him and kills him. 3 days before this hearing and 3 days before this information was to become public. Now, there was no one else at the house at the time of the shooting. It was just Doug and Ashley. While Ashley's mother and child lived there, they had gone to the park. As soon as Doug got to the house, Alicia Byers takes her granddaughter and they go to the park. So the only people at the house are the defendant and the victim. And you're going to hear three very important things about this shooting. Number one, Ashley Benefield was the only person that was armed. It was her gun. She had it from before. It's not like she took it away from Doug. It was her gun. And Doug Benefield was not armed. He had no gun, no knife, no club, no weapon of any kind. Number two, Ashley Benefield was not injured.
Okay, I'm just going to stop for a quick second to point out here. Teacup Kraken says, I understand not wanting to say her name, but this daughter is in the same vein as it. That's exactly what struck me when I heard that. Also, her saying that Doug Benefield is not armed. He usually was. He usually carried a gun in his boot or in his shoe or on his... He had a lot of guns and he was armed all the time. And I'm just going to point out that she may have had no way of knowing that he wasn't armed. So that's interesting.
Law enforcement took pictures of her right after the shooting. And then again, you'll hear in a few days, they took more pictures. Because sometimes law enforcement, they know that bruises sometimes don't show up right away, that it takes several days for these bruises to show up. So they took pictures several days later. And you'll see those pictures and you'll see that Ashley Benefield is not injured. She has some very superficial scratches on her midsection. Who knows where they came from? She had cats in the house, but who knows? But this is the only injury to her. And the third thing is the trajectory of the fatal bullet. Now, he was shot multiple times, but one of the bullets was fatal. The trajectory of that bullet was side to side.
Okay, I'm going to point that out too. She says the trajectory of the bullet was side to side. All of the reporting on this, if any of you have read any of the articles on this, they were saying that he was shot in the back. Clearly, she is saying right now, the prosecutor, her name is Suzanne O'Donnell, he was not shot in the back. She's saying it was side to side. And Kay Layla, I just want to say that I would never say that your comment was weird. So I'm glad you're back in a safe place.
Was not straight on. Doug Benefield was not facing her, coming at her at the time that the fatal shot was fired. Now, as you go through this trial, it's a lot of information, a lot of timeline, but it's all very important to understand the tenor of this relationship between these two people. And it goes all the way back to when they met, back in 2016. That was the end of August 2016, they meet. They were both involved in some political event and they met. 13 days later, they married. Doug Benefield was 54 years old. Ashley Benefield was 24 years old.
Again, some political event. They were involved in some political event. She doesn't want to mention that it was the Republican, that Ashley worked for Trump. She doesn't want to mention Trump, I guess. That's interesting. Some political event. Okay.
So there was a 30-year age gap between the two of them. They knew each other 13 days and they got married. Ashley Benefield was very into the ballet, had been an ex-dancer. Her dream was to start a ballet company. And lo and behold, her husband has the money and the connections to get this done. So he begins and she begins to put this ballet company together. And they do put a ballet company together. But before it can actually take off, it falls apart. Before they're married even a whole year, so in April of 2017, Doug Benefield has his vasectomy reversed because they want a child. Within weeks or months of the vasectomy reversal, the defendant is pregnant. So all within a year of being married, they have done a vasectomy reversal, gotten pregnant, started a ballet, and the ballet has crumbled. While Ashley is pregnant, she decides she's too sick from the pregnancy, morning sickness, and that she needs her mother to take care of her.
Wait, did that sound to anyone else a little bit condescending? She decides that she is sick and she needed her mother to take care of her. Already, this is not playing well with me as a woman, as a mother. And to hear that come out of another woman's mouth in that tone is a little, I don't know, I'm just pointing this out, but let me know what you think. I'm going to rewind it a second. She becomes a little sick and she needs her mother to take care of her. Anybody ever have really bad morning sickness? I have 5 kids. Here we go. Listen.
Ashley is pregnant. She decides she's too sick from the pregnancy, morning sickness, and that she needs her mother to take care of her. Her mother's in Florida, in Bradenton, Florida. So during her pregnancy, she moves to Bradenton, Florida to live with her mother so her mother can take care of her during the sickness. The two never lived together again. This was the last time these two lived together. They continued a long-distance relationship when she first moved to Florida and continued trying to keep it together in communication. But about the same time as the ballet collapses, right about all of this time, Ashley Benefield starts complaints against the victim. Her complaints are things like, the main one was that Doug Benefield was poisoning her with heavy metals, and her unborn child was being poisoned, that there was poison in her tea, that he was giving her poison. There were also other complaints, domestic violence complaints, different types of complaints, but not once will you hear that she ever said he hit her. Not once did she ever say he choked her, kicked her, anything like that.
Is that the only kind of abuse? Hitting, kicking, punching? She's glossing over this as if it shouldn't be taken seriously. It's a joke. She wanted her mom. Right after that, she started making these complaints. She doesn't call them allegations. Notice word choice for lawyers is very important. Cam just graduated law school. He's studying for the bar right now. He knows. Word choice is so important. She started making complaints. as if, she's just complaining about morning sickness. The hormones are raging. Any of you who know early stages of pregnancy, especially, you start thinking that you're crazy sometimes. The hormones are nuts in early stages. That's usually sometimes how you know that you're pregnant, because you become so irrational and a little bit crazy. That's how you know you're pregnant for a lot of people, including myself. So he also traveled a lot, and maybe that was the reason that she wanted to go stay with her mom. And I'm wondering, since he had a 15-year-old daughter at the time, Eva was 15 at the time, who was staying with Eva when she moved to Florida? I don't know the answer to that. Emma's like, I can already tell this is going to piss me off, and I'm not sure I agree with the defense either. What a way to frame it to the jury. It's so important. I don't know the breakdown of the jury. If anybody knows, 6 people. I don't know how many women and how many men. But is that the only kind of abuse that we recognize, is the kind that's physical? And because he had never hit her, punched her, or kicked her before, that her complaints must be ridiculous? I just have to rewind that a second to hear what words she used again. Tell me if you think I'm overreacting here.
There were also other complaints, domestic violence complaints, different types of complaints, but not once will you hear that she ever said he hit her. Not once did she ever say he choked her, kicked her, anything like that. Even though she's making these complaints, the victim, Doug Benefield, is still trying to make this work.
Of course.
And you're going to see some text messages and hear some things. He's still trying to make this work. But she is having none of it. So at about the time that she's ready to give birth, Doug Benefield contacts an attorney here in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, Stephanie Murphy, and asks her to help. And asks her to help him write a letter to her, to Ashley Benefield, to state that he wants to be a part of the birth and he wants to be a part of this child's life, and to please keep in contact with him. Ashley,
please keep in contact with him. Do you think that's what the lawyer's letter said? Please keep in contact with her. I would love to see that letter. Are they going to introduce that into evidence? People are asking if she is in jail or if she's been out on bail. She's been out on bail, $100,000 bond since 2020. So this has been going on for almost 4 years. She wears an ankle monitor and she has something like an 11 o'clock curfew. Just to straighten that out for you.
never answers that letter. That letter is sent via email on March 15th of 2018, which was several weeks early. She wasn't due yet. And the next day, she is induced. Her pregnancy is induced, and she gives birth to a daughter. She never tells Doug. He doesn't even know his child is born for weeks. And she never responds to the letter. The way that Doug knows that this.
Okay, stop. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep stopping this. It was an email. You said it was sent to her by email. Maybe she doesn't check her email constantly like some people do. Is that a possibility? And if a lawyer is going to send a letter like that, it should be done certified mail. I'm just saying. It's an email. Selena says, not saying he abused her because we don't know for sure, but abusers always want to make things work. They need to keep control of you. Right. Right. And as if being induced was a bad thing too. I'm assuming she had a OBGYN that made the decision to induce her due to these allegations of poisoning that could have been very, very dangerous to an unborn child. So, not liking this opening so far. I'm finding it a little bit condescending, a little bit fluffy, a little bit just glossing by things that could have been real. But let me know what you think.
This child is born is that Ashley Benefield starts filing complaints again. And based on these complaints, he figures out, oh, my child's born. And now we have more complaints. The complaints revolved around the poisoning and the things that I talked about earlier. And she filed for what's called a violation of injunction, or I'm sorry, she filed for an injunction. An injunction is our legal way of saying restraining order. So when someone wants a restraining order, they have to go through a process and go to court, and the court has to decide, and you get a restraining order. So that was her process. She was trying to get a restraining order against Doug, and the allegations were what I said to you.
What?
At the same time,
Tell us again. Tell us again what the allegations were. That he tried to poison her with the tea, but that he never hit her, choked her, or kicked her? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Not very clear.
Doug Benefield had not seen his child, had not met his child. So he did a cross complaint to say, please let me have contact with my child. I've never even met my child. So this was set for a hearing. And it ended up going 2 days. It was long. It was a long process, a lot of witnesses in family court. And it ended up going 2 days. It began in July 30th, 2018, and it finished on September 17th, 2018. And at the conclusion of that hearing, the judge said, no. No, you are not getting a restraining order, and no, you cannot keep this man away from his child. And granted Doug Benefield immediate visitation with his daughter. He met his daughter for the first time. She was 6 months old. And at the time when they were exchanging custody, which was at the sheriff's office for meeting the child, all of this animus had been going on. I mean, they had just had these hearings and all of this. And at that first time sharing, that's what they call it nowadays in family courts, time sharing. At the first time sharing, Ashley starts becoming very nice to Doug and said,
oh, is that unusual that she would try to keep the peace? First of all, here's a tell, is that they had to do their exchanges at the sheriff's office. That only happens most of the time, you can let me know if you know, in very contentious cases where there could be some fear of something happening and therefore it has to be done at the sheriff's office. So right away, that's going off in my head as, oh, they have to exchange at the sheriff's office. They can't just exchange in a public place, right? Like Four Corners in Oklahoma, where Veronica Butler was supposed to do her exchanges, and she wound up dead at the hands of her mother-in-law, Grandma Tiffany. If you know that case. So the way she's glossing over this, I don't know, turning me off.
says, basically, I'll go with you for the visitation. And that's what they do.
Because she did not want the baby to be alone with him. She was being nice and said, I will go along with you for the visitation. Right. Life on makeup. Apparently she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. She was trying to be nice, trying to keep the peace, trying not to let things escalate. That's what I'm getting from this so far. And listen, we haven't heard any of the evidence, but her playing nice with him is a bad thing. Her going along with him for visitation is a bad thing. Or is she trying to protect her child because the courts didn't believe her, which happens a lot. Tell me if you're from Florida and if you've been in any kind of family court proceeding, it happens a lot everywhere.
The family goes off for visitation. And that begins approximately a year, of basically them working on the relationship, going out to restaurants, doing things, hanging out together as a family. About a year. Now, Doug never moves in with Ashley. He keeps a separate residence. But after August of 2018, Ashley just stops talking to him. And that time, Doug files.
Hold on a second. That's Court TV. That's not us. Hold on.
And that time, Doug files.
Files what?
The defendant started off with 5 different complaints, all revolving not around her this time, but about the child. Because that's visitation with the child. So now these are using the child.
If anybody already watched this on Court TV, was this a Court TV issue? I know some of you are ahead. No spoilers, but if you were ahead, what happened here? what I gleaned from what I could understand from this as it was skipping through is that after this, Ashley began to make complaints about the child, about things that he was doing to the child.
Here is that not one of these charges was ever prosecuted. Not one of these ever left law enforcement. And now has tried these 5 cases after Doug filed for a divorce. Law enforcement's not helping her. See this still visitation going on. And in meeting of all these people, logical evaluation. So
It's almost unwatchable. Did you guys have this issue?
And Dr. Broder does a very extensive evaluation. Separately, he meets with the child. She's a little girl, and at the time of this, she's about not yet 2 years old. During this evaluation, and what you'll hear from Dr. Broder is that Ashley Benefield acted very different when she was with Doug and when she was not with Doug. When she was with Doug, it was, we're moving to Maryland, we're going to work on our relationship and try and make this family work. When she's not with Doug, she's saying, no, how I do not want that. I want to reconcile with him. And to Doug's knowledge, all he's hearing is want to reconcile. So that's what he knows.
Hold on. Let's refresh this and see if it'll help. Thank you. It always helps, right?
She talked about how they met at a political
Just
event.
the problem is finding where we were, but we're just going to go back.
Now, Doug never moves in with Ashley. He keeps a separate residence. But after August of 2018, Ashley just stops talking to him.
All right, let's try law and crime, because this is important, and I want us to hear what she has to say. So let's just give it a sec. I have an Ethernet plugged in too, so it shouldn't even be. It's not me. It's not my internet. Okay, we're switching over. She's talking about them hanging around in the pool and going to the restaurants together. So we're just a little bit back from where we were so we can get this all in one straight swoop.
Benefield's apartment complex. By all images, they look like they were trying to reconcile. The problem was that is not what Ashley Benefield wanted. Although that's what she was portraying, that's not what she wanted. At the time that this shooting happened, they were planning to move to Maryland. Ashley's mother had inherited a home in Maryland, and they were going to move to Maryland. Doug was also going to move to Maryland. They were going to continue to live separate and continue to attempt to reconcile, but they were all going to move to Maryland together. Excuse me. At the time that this happened, everybody was in moving mode. There were boxes everywhere, furniture, beds upended. They had a U-Haul that they were using together. They had a pod that was in the defendant's driveway that they were putting all of their things into. And every day around this time, Doug Benefield was going to Ashley's home to assist her. in putting these things into the pod, putting these things into the U-Haul, because the plan was that they were all going to pack up in the next few days and move to Maryland. And it continued to try and work on their relationship. The problem was Ashley Benefield knew that this was a ruse. She didn't intend to reconcile. She didn't intend to try to make this work. And the problem was there was a court hearing on September 30th of 2020. And at that court hearing, all of this was going to come out. It was going to come out that she was acting one way when she was by herself, and she was acting another way when she was with Doug Benefield. That she was telling him she wanted to work on things, that she wanted to get this marriage back together. But yet when separate, she was saying she had absolutely no intention of reconciling, did not want him around, and did not want this to work. On the 30th of September, this was going to come out. On the 27th of September, she shoots him and kills him. 3 days before this hearing and 3 days before this information was to become public. Now, there was no one else at the house at the time of the shooting. It was just Doug and Ashley. While Ashley's mother and child lived there, they had gone to the park. As soon as Doug got to the house, Alicia Byers takes her granddaughter and they go to the park. So the only people at the house are the defendant and the victim. And you're going to hear three very important things about this shooting. Number one, Ashley Benefield was the only person that was armed. It was her gun. She had it from before. It's not like she took it away from Doug. It was her gun. And Doug Benefield was not armed. He had no gun, no knife, no club, no weapon of any kind.
No club. We went a little further back than I wanted to. For those of you who are just joining, we're a little bit behind. We did not hear the defense's opening yet. This is still the prosecution opening. And if you want to hear my commentary on this part of the opening, it's towards the beginning of the stream, but it's worth playing again.
Number two, Ashley Benefield was not injured. Law enforcement took pictures of her right after the shooting. And then again, you'll hear in a few days, they took more pictures. Because sometimes law enforcement, they know that bruises sometimes don't show up right away, that it takes several days for these bruises to show up. So they took pictures several days later. And you'll see those pictures and you'll see that Ashley Benefield is not injured. She has some very superficial scratches on her midsection. Who knows where they came from? She had cats in the house.
The cats.
Who knows?
Yeah, the cats.
But this is the only injury to her. And the third thing is the trajectory of the fatal bullet. Now, he was shot multiple times, but one of the bullets was fatal. The trajectory of that bullet was side to side.
If you're just joining again, this trajectory of the bullet was side to side, not in the back, as it has been reported throughout the pendency of this case pre-trial by all media outlets.
It was not straight on. Doug Benefield was not facing her, coming at her at the time that the fatal shot was fired. Now, as you go through this trial, it's a lot of information, a lot of timeline, but it's all very important to understand the tenor of this relationship between these two people. And it goes all the way back to when they met back in 2016. That was the end of August 2016, they meet. They were both involved in some political event and they met. 13 days later, they married. Doug Benefield was 54 years old. Ashley Benefield was 24 years old. So there was a 30-year age gap between the two of them. They knew each other 13 days and they got married.
Whose fault is that?
Ashley Benefield was very into the ballet, had been an ex-dancer. Her dream was to start a ballet company. And lo and behold, her husband has the money and the connections to get this done. So he begins and she begins to put this ballet company together. And they do put a ballet company together. But before it can actually take off, it falls apart. Before they're married even a whole year, so in April of 2017, Doug Benefield has his vasectomy reversed because they want a child. Within weeks or months of the vasectomy reversal, the defendant is pregnant. So all within a year of being married, they have done a vasectomy reversal, gotten pregnant, started a ballet, and the ballet has crumbled. While Ashley is pregnant, she decides she's too sick from the pregnancy, morning sickness, and that she needs her mother to take care of her. Her mother's in Florida, in Bradenton, Florida. So during her pregnancy, she moves to Bradenton, Florida to live with her mother so her mother can take care of her during the sickness. The two never lived together again. This was the last time these two lived together. They continued a long-distance relationship when she first moved to Florida and continued trying to keep it together in communication. But about the same time as the ballet collapses, right about all of this time, Ashley Benefield starts complaints against the victim. Her complaints are things like, the main one was that Doug Benefield was poisoning her with heavy metals, and her unborn child was being poisoned, that there was poison in her tea, that he was giving her poison. There were also other complaints, domestic violence complaints, different types of complaints, but not once will you hear that she ever said he hit her. Not once did she ever say he choked her, kicked her, anything like that. Even though she's making these complaints, the victim, Doug Benefield, is still trying to make this work. And you're going to see some text messages and hear some things. He's still trying to make this work. But she is having none of it. So at about the time that she's ready to give birth, Doug Benefield contacts an attorney here in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, Stephanie Murphy, and asks her to help. And asks her to help him write a letter to her, to Ashley Benefield, to state that he wants to be a part of the birth and he wants to be a part of this child's life and to please keep in contact with him. Ashley never answers that letter. That letter is sent via email on March 15th of 2018, which was several weeks early. She wasn't due yet. And the next day, she is induced, her pregnancy is induced, and she gives birth to a daughter.
That's exactly why you shouldn't follow the closed captioning, because it just said she gave birth to a dog. She didn't give birth to a dog, she gave birth to a daughter. So we listened to that second part again. My commentary was in the first part before Court TV started glitching, so we're a little bit behind. If you are coming from another stream, no spoilers, please.
She never tells Doug. He doesn't even know his child is born for weeks. And she never responds to the letter. The way that Doug knows that this child is born is that Ashley Benefield starts filing complaints again. And based on these complaints, he figures out, oh, my child's born. And now we have more complaints. The complaints revolved around the poisoning and the things that I talked about earlier. And she filed for what's called a violation of injunction, or I'm sorry, she filed for an injunction. An injunction is our legal way of saying restraining order. So when someone wants a restraining order, they have to go through a process and go to court, and the court has to decide, and you get a restraining order. So that was her process. She was trying to get a restraining order against Doug, and the allegations were what I said to you. At the same time, Doug Benefield had not seen his child, had not met his child. So he did a cross complaint to say, please let me have contact with my child. I've never even met my child. So this was set for a hearing. And it ended up going 2 days. It was long. It was a long process, a lot of witnesses in family court. And it ended up going 2 days. It began in July 30th, 2018, and it finished on September 17th, 2018. And at the conclusion of that hearing, the judge said, no. No, you are not getting a restraining order, and no, you cannot keep this man away from his child. And granted Doug Benefield immediate visitation with his daughter. He met his daughter for the first time. She was 6 months old. And at the time when they were exchanging custody, which was at the sheriff's office for
Talked about this.
meeting the child, all of this animus had been going on. I mean, they had just had these hearings and all of this. And at that first time sharing, that's what they call it nowadays in family courts, time sharing. At the first time sharing, Ashley starts becoming very nice to Doug and says, basically, I'll go with you for the visitation. And that's what they do.
Keeping the peace.
The family goes off for visitation. And that begins approximately a year of basically them working on the relationship, going out to restaurants, doing things, hanging out together as a family. About a year.
No, this is being repeated. Sorry, I rewound it too far when we had to switch over to Law and Crime because Court TV was glitching. So apologies for having to listen to this twice, but that's why I'm not stopping it. To give commentary.
Now, Doug never moves in with Ashley. He keeps a separate residence. But after almost a year, so around August of 2019, Ashley just stops talking to him. Just stops. And that's about the time Doug files for divorce. He finally says, okay, we're getting a divorce. Then what you'll hear is that the defendant started a whole new set of complaints. You will hear that she was involved in 5 different complaints, all revolving not around her this time, but about the child. Because now Doug has visitation with the child. So now these allegations are that Doug's abusing the child. And the allegations are that Doug's abusing the child. What you'll hear is that not one of these charges was ever prosecuted. Not one.
I think that it was ruled pre-trial that she wasn't supposed to bring that up, but maybe, I don't know why he overruled that objection. They were going to talk as about other proceedings as just other proceedings. Apparently the defense attorney thought she crossed the line and objected, but the judge is letting it in, so.
None of these charges ever left law enforcement. So the defendant now has tried these 5 complaints after Doug filed for a divorce. Law enforcement's not helping her. No one has said that Doug cannot see this child. So there's still visitation going on. And in this meeting of all these people, it was decided that Doug and Ashley Benefield will go for a psychological evaluation. So they do. And they go to Dr. Broder, and Dr. Broder does a very extensive psychological evaluation. And he meets with them together. He meets with them separately. He meets with them with the child, whose name is Emerson, by the way. She's a little girl. And at the time of the shooting, she was about not yet 2 years old. During this evaluation, and what you'll hear from Dr. Broder is that Ashley Benefield acted very different when she was with Doug and when she was not with Doug. When she was with Doug, it was, we're moving to Maryland. We're going to work on our relationship. We're going to try and make this family work. When she's not with Doug, she's saying, no way, no how. I do not want this. I don't want to reconcile with him. And to Doug's knowledge, all he's hearing is, I want to reconcile. So that's what he knows. That report was coming out at that hearing on September 30th, 2020. So September 30th, 2020, Ashley knew the ruse was up.
The ruse was up? That was, did she have a copy of the report? Hang on. The ruse was up. The hearing was for a protective order, for a restraining order against Doug. It wasn't for custody. And she already said that. Okay, so this is her motive. She's saying 3 days post-shooting, there was gonna be this hearing and the restraining order, and, the ruse was gonna be up? Okay.
Now, there had to be a request from both sides, the husband and the wife, to release this psychological report. And at one point before the hearing, Ashley Benefield tried to get Doug to drop that so the report would not get out, would not be released. Doug refused. So that report was coming out on the 30th, and on the 27th, she kills him and claims self-defense. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot of information about Doug Benefield. Probably some negative things, not so nice things. I would just ask you to remember who's saying them and why. Just because someone speaks words does not make it true. So use your common sense as you go through this trial. This is a long story with a lot of information, but you'll see that this was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder. Thank you.
Okay, that was Suzanne O'Donnell. Now we're
Taylor.
going to hear from Neil Taylor, who's the attorney for Ashley Benefield. Opening statement.
Thank you, Judge Wright. May I request to put the screen down?
He reminds me of Bruce Cutler. Let's remember innocent until proven guilty. Thanks, Danielle. Sorry, Danielle.
This is the divide between generations. I'm in the old school. I'd like to know that I have a picture and it's reliable. This is the new world. We rely on technology. I'm not sure that I'm a fan. All right, here we go.
Oh, I thought that was part of his opening. I was like, what a great opening. This is the divide between generations. I thought that was he was gonna focus on the generational divide between Ashley and Doug, but he just said that because they were trying to put the screen up. Okay, here we go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Douglas Benefield. He was 58 when Ashley Benefield was forced to shoot him. Can I see the second picture, please?
Are they not going to show us the pictures?
I want you to note how he's built for a 58-year-old man. Now, despite being raised by a family who taught me that it was ill to speak about the dead in an unflattering sense, I'm going to have some strong words about Douglas Benefield, the alleged victim in this case. I say alleged victim because he was anything but that. The evidence is going to show that Douglas Benefield was a very disturbed man. Of that, I assure you, you'll have no doubt when the case is over. 30 years older than Ashley, he was obsessed with her, and he successfully portrayed himself as everything he was not in an effort to win her hand in marriage.
Okay, hold on. That's the picture that we didn't see. So this is the way that Doug Benefield was built. I just want to point out Roseanne. Roseanne says there was a movie on this. Everything the prosecutor said is the truth. Ashley was the abuser. She did it mentally abused towards him. I don't know. Are we going to believe movies or are we going to believe the evidence that we see in court? I don't know from who was paid to make that movie. I don't know if it was a documentary. I don't know if it was a Lifetime movie, but I'm going to submit to you, don't believe everything you read on the internet or everything you watch in a documentary or everything that you watch on television in any form. A lot of those things are sensationalized. A lot of them are not accurate. And so let's just keep in mind that we have a basic tenet in America: innocent until proven guilty. We have a lot of survivors of DV in the chat. And that's why you hear a lot of people talking about their experiences. And this is a safe place for people to do that. And so if you're going to go with Ashley's guilty, what's wrong with all of you people? You might want to go watch this on another channel. There's plenty of channels to go watch it on. These are people in the chat here. There's 1,700 of you. A great deal of you are survivors. And we're not tolerating the trash talk or the bullying here. So that is Doug Benefield's physique at the time of his death in September of 2020.
in an effort to win her hand in marriage. Despite promoting himself as a religious, honorable, and decent human being, Doug Benefield was a manipulative, cunning, and abusive man who absolutely insisted on control. Among other things, you're going to learn during this trial that over the course of this 4-year relationship, Douglas Benefield did the following. He fired a handgun into the ceiling of their kitchen on an occasion to stop Ashley from talking. He threw a loaded gun at Ashley. He punched their dog in the face so hard that he knocked the dog unconscious. He regularly carried a concealed firearm that was racked, meaning pulled back and ready to fire. He unlawfully placed a tracker on Ashley Benefield's vehicle. He was regularly observed following Ashley Benefield in her car, driving in Manatee and Sarasota counties, despite the fact that he was living in South Carolina, having driven all the way just to tail her. He was caught by a neighbor at night, standing in the neighbor's backyard in an effort to peer into Ashley's house. He punched numerous holes in the drywall of their home when they lived together in South Carolina. And he had a previous marital history of domestic violence. Ashley Benefield was painfully aware of all of this on September 27th, 2020, the day of the homicide.
Okay, so far, this is a very different story. That's right. Thank you. For those of you who didn't know that he punched the dog into unconsciousness, that may change your thinking a little bit. And remember that in opening statements, everything that the attorney says, while it's not evidence, it is everything that the attorney intends to prove. So he's got the receipts on everything, all of these 7 things that he just mentioned. And I didn't know when we went over this the other day, the one thing that's new to me is that he drove from South Carolina, from Charleston to Florida to follow her around. And that's a little bit frightening to me. Yeah, prayers up. Thanks, Rebecca. He's got receipts on all this stuff. He's not making it up.
And I want to assure you that this is not going to come to you from just one place. These are acts that were admitted by Douglas Benefield himself. Ashley Benefield feared him. That was no secret, ladies and gentlemen. She left him a letter when she moved out 3 years prior to the homicide, detailing how scared she was of him because of all of these acts. She feared for herself and for her unborn child. 3 years before the shooting. She left him. He pursued her. She rejected him. He would not take no for an answer. She at times despised him. He did not care. She moved to get away from him. He followed her. She decided to go to Maryland. Surprise. He decided to go to Maryland as well. She belonged to him. He had the right to be with her, and no less than God decided that to be the case. Doug Benefield viewed Ashley Benefield as his property. Abusers seek to control their victims, to dominate them. At times, the pressure that Doug Benefield exerted and brought to bear upon Ashley Benefield was so overwhelming that it sometimes triggered questionable suspicions in Ashley's dedicated effort to protect herself and her child. Domestic violence victims have several things in common. Number one,
An argument, Judge?
Ooh.
Oh, good.
number
Let him
one,
go.
they initially believe
Look,
things will
DV.
get better.
DV victims have in common. And that's interesting that the prosecution objected and said, isn't this argument? And the judge says, no, I'm going to let him do it. Correct. Sinbad 333. The opening statements aren't evidence yet, but they have to have receipts of everything that they're saying in their opening. Remember, for those of you who watched the Karen Reed trial with me, everything that David Yannetti said in his opening, he had receipts for. So you can't just say things that you can't prove. And the judge knows the case, so he knows what's allowed and what's not. And apparently the defense must have an expert that is going to say that that DV victims have these three things in common. And I'm going to just point this out and say it a little bit louder for those of you in the back. Locomotive, I've never seen you in the chat before. I don't know you. I guess you're new here. It says the way Melanie and most of this chat already has determined she's the victim 30 minutes into this trial is scary AF. Again, like if you don't want to watch the coverage here, you don't have to. There are plenty of other places you can go watch the coverage. So this is my channel. This is the way we run things here. And so much of my audience, so many people in this chat are survivors. So if you don't like it here and you're on the side of Ashley's guilty and I haven't heard a damn thing, you're free to go watch it somewhere else.
Ooh.
Number one, they initially believe things will get better. Instead, they get worse. Number two, domestic violence victims develop a get along, go along attitude. It's the mentality because appeasement keeps the beast at bay. Just do what he wants and you'll be safe. These domestic violence victims constantly speak about walking on eggshells. And the reason they describe it like that is for fear of anything that they say may trigger a reprisal by the abuser. And if children are involved, everything is magnified. They become hypervigilant. Ashley Benefield developed all of those characteristics.
Okay, again, St. Randall, STE Randall, you don't seem neutral at all and already made your mind up. It's my channel. I don't have to be neutral. Because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I have to be neutral. I am not a cupcake. It says that right on a sign over here. I am not a cupcake. I can't make everyone happy. I have 5 children. I've had that sign since my children were born. I can't make everyone happy. I'm not a cupcake. If you would like to watch this coverage on a channel that sits there with their face on the screen, doesn't explain anything to you, and simply plays the coverage, that might be a better fit for you. Really, it might be a better fit for you. But for the 30 years of my legal career, I have stood up for victims and survivors who do not have a voice. Okay? So if you don't like to watch the coverage here because you don't think I'm neutral, please, please, I could give you 5 other channels right now that you can go to with people who don't interrupt the coverage, who don't have anything to say, and will simply rebroadcast someone else's stream. Or you can go straight to Court TV or Law and Crime and watch it there and try to survive in the chat. Again, so if you're going to come in here and pick apart the way that I cover cases such as this, and my opinions shift as the case goes on, that's what we do here. Okay? Again, louder for people in the back. If you don't like it, it's not an airport. You don't need to announce your departure or criticize the way that I run my channel. All you need to do is quietly go and turn the channel. That's all you need to do. It's not hard.
So on 9/27/2020, the day of the homicide, Doug arrives at the residence of Ashley Benefield. And as you heard, they are living separately. He does not live there. He never resided there. This is at her home in Bradenton. He had no claim for entering that home on that day, except with the permission of Ashley, which she gave on that day because she was moving to Maryland and Doug was going to Maryland as well. But he knew, make no mistake, as the prosecutors told you, Doug Benefield knew full well on that day that this relationship was over. They were not going to be living together. Maybe, hopefully, they could work out some type of co-parenting agreement, but she was done. So how does that day's events unfold? What happens that results in us all assembling here this morning? It starts, ladies and gentlemen, with Doug Benefield once again seeking control. He is simmering when he arrives at Ashley's home on that afternoon. Why is he simmering? He's on a slow boil, actually, because he knows that Ashley's moving. He knows that this relationship is over. And immediately there's a discussion about how they should pack the belongings, with Ashley taking the position that her belongings should be packed last. Why? Because Ashley's things are going to be unloaded first. And Doug will then continue on to wherever it is that he was going to reside. So, this is the most vulnerable time for a domestic violence victim, when the abuser recognizes that he's about to lose her. So what's his response to this? All right, classic tactics of an abuser, they are threats and intimidation on this afternoon as the two of them are trying to pack this U-Haul and this pod. In an effort to avoid confrontation with him, Ashley says after a short while, gee, you know, I'm really pretty exhausted. Why don't we stop for the day? We can finish tomorrow. Doug ignores it. His response is to grow increasingly aggressive and hostile. Not once, but twice, Doug body checks Ashley. And by body check, I mean he passes her in a hallway, slams his shoulder into her shoulder, almost knocking her over. That's not enough. The next thing is, as they're passing in a hallway, he's carrying a cardboard box. He jams the cardboard box into Ashley's side, which leaves scratches that the police photographer took. Again, now fearing for her safety because she sees how he is escalating in his behavior, she tries to persuade him, look, let's finish for the day. It's getting late. I'm tired. No go. Instead, Doug bellows, I know what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave. I'm your husband, and I can spend the night if I want to. Well, that was enough for Ashley. She heads for the front door of the house to leave. Doug chases up to her, grabs her by the arm or hand, and spins her around so that his back is to the front door, blocking her from leaving. And he yells right in her face, where do you think you're going? Ashley, desperate at this point, Doug yells, you can't leave me. Ashley somehow finds the strength to summon up the nerve to say, I am done. You need to leave now. She commands him to leave the home. Terrified, while in his grasp, because he spun her around, his response is to smack her upside the head. And you'll see the pictures of her swollen face and her eye. And he yells, I am not done. Fearing for her life, as this was the first time that he had actually struck her. Up till then, it was always threats and intimidation. As intimidating as firing a gun may be to get you to stop speaking, he had never actually hit her. He'd pushed her. This time he struck her. Terrified after this.
Okay, this indicates to me, first of all, it's very triggering, it's very upsetting. Let's take a breath. I'm sorry, we can't slow the chat, Jill, because it screws up the algorithm. So if you need to slow the chat, you need to just put your finger on it and it'll slow it for you, or put your cursor on it if you're watching on a laptop, and it'll slow it for you so that you can read it. This opening indicates to me that she's going to testify, because there's no other way for him to get a lot of that evidence in about what happened. They were the only two there. So let's wait for that, because I think she's going to have to testify. She hasn't given any statements during the pretrial. She didn't call 911, so there's no statement from her there. A neighbor called 911. She did not testify at the motion to dismiss or the stand your ground hearing. That's why it was denied, because the judge wanted to hear from her. She didn't testify. I think that was a good choice, because she could have been cross-examined. And if she still lost that motion to dismiss, all that testimony would already be out there and they would have a way to defend it. So this indicates to me that she's going to have to testify in her own defense. She probably wants to tell her story, but her emotions look genuine to me right now. You can let me know what you think. And Laura says, Melanie, no one spoke up for me like you did when I was terrified. I'm sorry, Laura. I'm sorry that happened to you. But that's the way we roll here.
Fearing for her life, she heads for her bedroom where she has a firearm. She gets to the firearm. She turns around. She orders Doug to stop. When she looks up, he's in the doorway. Instead of seeing the gun and leaving, Doug gets into this warrior pose with his arms moving purposely and advances. At that point, petrified, she fires, believing that if he gets a hold of her, she will be either seriously injured or killed. To her horror, after firing, he continues to advance. She absolutely panics. She tries to get away and backs to the side to create more distance between them, but there is no place left for her to go in this small bedroom. At that point, in utter panic, she keeps firing the gun. She sees Doug's legs go up in the air, almost as if he was running and slipped, and he falls backwards. Instinctively, she flees the house and heads next door to John Sant's house. He's a neighbor. When all is said and done, ladies and gentlemen, and the testimony and the evidence is complete, the only thing that's going to have been established here beyond a reasonable doubt is that Douglas Benefield was a violent abuser. Ashley Benefield's efforts to placate him was absolutely consistent with what abused women do, especially when a child is involved, and that Ashley's result and resource to deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor.
All right.
Judge, can we approach?
Yes.
So not too long. Got a lot of points in there. A little sidebar. A lot of people say this rings true to them. Monique says, I love that you recognize that a great deal of us are survivors. I'm now a victor who escaped a horrific abuse. Thanks, Monique. I think you found your people here. Warriors, all. Now this gives us the ability to fast forward. I don't know why she's covering her ears. Hold on a second. Oh, I see she's wearing a headphones so that she can hear what they're discussing. Sidebar. That's great. She doesn't have to walk up there. She can just listen from her seat.
All right, State, call your first witness.
Tommie Benefield. Tommie.
This is cousin Tommy. It's cousin Tommy. We watched him the other day do an interview on Court TV. Remember cousin Tommy? Here he comes. He's the spokesperson for the Benefield family, for Doug's family.
So kind of stretch a little bit. There's not enough room for yoga poses and calisthenics, but sometimes it just helps to stand up on your feet and move your back a little bit. Please feel free to do that if you need to.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Call me, please.
So far, I like this judge. Let me know what you think.
That's right. Just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from that microphone. It adjusts up, down, left, right, however you need it. Speak in a loud, clear voice, we'll hear you.
Yes, sir, I will.
Good morning.
Good morning, Suzanne.
Please state your name.
Tommie Douglas Benefield Jr.
Can you spell those?
Yes, ma'am. Tommie. Middle name Douglas, Douglas. Last name Benefield, Benefield, and Jr.
And what was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
I'm Doug's first cousin.
Okay. How close were you and Doug?
Doug and I were completely attached, connected all the way through his adult life at varying times, from daily to semi-annually, certainly quarterly, though a whole entire adult life.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm currently employed by a major airline out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I run a flight school, or a portion of a flight school, in Vero Beach, Florida, 3 days a week. It's a full-time job.
Okay. And were you and Doug close about flying?
Yes, ma'am. He followed me into the Navy. I was a Navy pilot off aircraft carriers. And Doug stayed with me in the months prior to him going into the Navy. He went through aviation officer candidate school, went through flight school, and then flew for 3 years and 2 deployments off aircraft carriers like I did. Same aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, as a matter of fact.
Okay. How old was Doug Benefield when he died?
All right. He was 5 years younger than me. I'm 68 now. That was 4 years ago. 64. He was 59, I believe.
About how tall was Doug?
5'9", 5'10" at the most.
Approximately how much did he weigh at the time?
My guess is 160, 165. He was slender and fairly small for a man.
Okay. And before Doug moved to Florida, where did he live?
Before he moved.
Before he moved down here to Bradenton, Florida, where did he live?
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to pick a year at that point. I'm sorry. He had a home all the way up until his death in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just north of Charleston. 701 Preservation Place was the address.
Okay. And he lived at that address before moving to Bradenton, Florida, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then he rented the house out when he moved to Bradenton for visitation of their daughter.
Okay. And before he met Ashley, who did he live with at the house?
The house for multiple years was Doug, his longtime wife Renee, and their daughter Eva. That's prior to Renee's death in 2015, December of 2015.
Okay. So Renee died in 2015. Do you know how she died?
Yes, ma'am. She died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
Okay.
Undiagnosed heart ailment. I'd like to see the autopsy report on that. Was she cremated? There were allegations that Ashley thought that he had poisoned his late wife as well. Ashley was his third wife. His first wife ended in divorce within 6 months or something when he was 28. Renee was his second wife. I think they were together for 15 years. And I'm assuming there was an autopsy if that's what he's saying, unless it's just what the death certificate said and there was no autopsy on Renee, but that's interesting.
Is
Well, it's not qualified.
He's not qualified.
Lack of qualifications,
Yes.
overruled on that basis.
was Renee Eva Benefield's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you say that date again? Was 2015 that she died?
I believe it's December 2nd, but I may have the day off, but not the month of 2015.
2015. All right. And I want to ask you now, switch to Ashley. So about how long after Renee died did Doug meet Ashley?
9 months.
Okay. When did you first meet Ashley?
I met Ashley in the spring of 2017. I believe the date was either March 14th or April 14th.
And did you know about Ashley before you met her?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did your meeting come about?
I was flying for Southwest Airlines as a captain at the time. They changed my schedule like they do many times in the airline world. And I ended up not overnighting in Baltimore, Maryland, and they sent me to Charleston, South Carolina. Because I was going to Charleston, I texted Doug and said, hey, I'll be in to Charleston tonight. I'd like to have dinner. And he said, great. Text.
Sustained.
Hearsay.
During your conversations, did he mention the name Ashley?
In the second text chain, which is entered.
Sustained.
I'm
Okay, just pointing out here that they're allowed to state the grounds for their objections, which is something refreshing that we were not allowed to see in Norfolk County, Massachusetts during the Karen retrial. They were not allowed to state the grounds for their objections. And he's that close with his cousin, Doug, but he doesn't meet his new wife for almost a year after he met her. So that's interesting.
Asking because
I can answer the question, ma'am. When I arrived in Charleston, I texted Doug, and his text to me specifically was,
you can't speak about what Doug said to you,
okay,
but during the text messages, did he indicate to you there was a female involved?
yes, that's the first mention of Ashley to me, that we were not going to have dinner at the airport, and that I was to take Uber up to Mount Pleasant to meet them.
Okay. And was that at their house?
That was at Doug's house. Yes, ma'am.
So he never even knew that Doug got married. He never even heard about Ashley until, let's see, he met her in August. 7 or 8 months. That's how close they were.
701 Preservation Place.
Doug's house at the time. And how long were you with them, the two of them together?
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
Why
And
were
during
they?
this time, did you have multiple conversations
Okay.
with both of them?
That's kind of weird to me. Why are they going back to his hotel room to hang out for 4 or 5 hours? I mean, he's a pilot. He worked for Southwest. I don't think that isn't this what they call deadheading, when you have to stay overnight at an airport and then get back on a flight the next day? Or deadheading is when you go back. In any event, not the same as being a deadhead like I am a Grateful Deadhead. They're hanging out in his hotel room. I'm pretty sure that Southwest isn't paying for a suite. That's kind of weird. Okay. Just pointing that out. For no other reason than I'm just pointing that out.
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met,
Okay.
starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
And what did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his business investors
That's
were.
your personal knowledge.
Defendant's statement.
Yeah, overruled.
You can go ahead.
Both Ashley and Doug told me about how they met the first night at a political meeting, how Ashley had reached out to him before that meeting. They showed me text messages between them for the 10 days between the first meeting and her second meeting with him up in Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They talked about how they had mutual interests, mutual alignment, how they were looking for the same thing in a relationship. They talked about, Ashley talked specifically about her fibromyalgia and pain associated with her ballet dancing days. Ashley talked about her mother, her upbringing, about her father, about the separation there.
Okay.
Yeah, he can't
Do you
talk
have an
about what
objection?
Ashley said.
Yes, sir.
And the basis?
Hearsay.
It's my
defendant's statement.
understanding this is the defendant's statement.
Yes.
All right, overruled.
Okay.
Her statements about her fibromyalgia and about the fact that she was abandoned by her father. Okay, if you want to let that in, I don't think that's helpful for the prosecution, by the way. That she was in pain all the time with fibromyalgia and that she had abandonment issues from her dad and she suffered trauma. Okay, let it in. That's fine.
Let me stop you there. So she said that her and Doug met at a political event.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the time that you were meeting with them, were they married?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate to you when they got married or how long they had been married?
Yes, ma'am. 13 days from first meeting.
That they got married 13 days after they met?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate where they got married?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that?
That was in Mount Pleasant or Charleston. Doug's best friend at the time, Tripp, married them.
Okay.
Trip.
Did Ashley ever discuss?
If you have a friend named Trip, put a 3 in the chat. Usually it's like when somebody's the third, they call him Trip. or maybe for other reasons. But if you have a friend named Chip, put a 3. Trip, Trip, put a 3 in the chat. I have a friend named Trip, more than one.
With you that she carried a gun.
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
She said that on their initial meeting, in the political meeting, that she and Doug's traveling partner in business went outside of Secret Service people, and she showed him the gun she was carrying at that event in her bra.
Okay. And she talked to you about this during your meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I want to jump forward a little bit, but did you have any conversations that night about them wanting to have a child? Or was that a different time?
I don't remember us talking about it that first night. No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember a conversation with Doug and Ashley, specifically Ashley, about them wanting a child?
I believe it was later in the late spring, the next time that I visited with them.
Okay. And to your knowledge, could Doug have children?
He had a vasectomy after having his daughter with Renee, his longtime wife.
Did Ashley?
I'm sorry, so no, he
Okay.
couldn't have children.
Did Ashley speak about that in front of you, Ashley and Doug together, or Ashley separate about the vasectomy?
They did when they were discussing having Doug have a vasectomy reversal. Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
All right. And to your knowledge, did that reversal ultimately go through?
Yes, ma'am, and I believe Ashley actually paid for it on a credit card. They talked about that.
Okay. And ultimately, she became pregnant?
Yes, 3 months after the vasectomy reversal, she became pregnant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they end up, I'm going to skip a little bit forward now.
Yes, ma'am.
Did they end up having a wedding reception?
They did. I believe it was June of 2017. I was single parenting at the time, and I wasn't able to attend, but it was in Charleston, South Carolina, at the home of one of Doug's business partners.
Okay. You mentioned something about ballet dancing.
Actually, I think it was at a hotel in downtown Charleston. Didn't we just talk about this the other day? So already he's getting some of these facts wrong. And I think that the wedding reception, let me just go back to my notes here, was not, I don't think it was in June. Actually, I think it was in June, but I thought it was at a downtown Charleston hotel, not at the home of his business partner. That's what my notes say.
So I'm going to ask you about that. In your meetings and discussions with Ashley, did she indicate she was interested in the ballet?
She spoke about the fact that she had been a ballet dancer, that she had performed in, I'll call them shows, back, I believe, in Maryland, where she grew up. And by the time that I first met Ashley, they had formed the ballet company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. And they were, at the time that I first met her, they were working on getting that ballet company up and running.
Okay. And was this going to be a large endeavor?
Several $1 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Up to 40 dancers were hired. Yes, ma'am, large endeavor.
Okay. And do you know what Doug's role was in that? In your discussions with Ashley, did you find out what Doug's role was?
Yeah, Doug and Ashley talked about it on the first night I met her, about how they founded the ballet, how Doug did the online limited liability corporation work, founded the name, resurrected that name, how they worked together to try to build a ballet that was diverse and open to more than one body size, body shape, body color. That was the philosophy of the ballet as they explained it. That was Ashley's dream.
And how was it funded?
It was funded several ways. A number of Doug's business partner, friends, and Doug himself invested money. They had a major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time. And in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank. So he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
Okay,
So-
hold on. Did you just see Ashley poke her lawyer because she wanted to tell him something? There goes your, anybody who had a gold digger theory. There it goes. He didn't have any money. He didn't have any money. He had to sell stocks and get investors. And the other day, when we went over we only did a 1-day pretrial summary on this. I could have done it for at least a week. I could have done at least 5 episodes on it because there was so much more to cover. But there was a lawsuit back in the 90s against Doug by someone that he tried to get money from, an investor who said that he swindled him out of lots of money. And he filed a lawsuit against him. And the guy, when he was interviewed for Vanity Fair, said, I gave him so much money that I'm afraid that I'm embarrassed to even tell you how much money I gave him. And that eventually he had to sue him to try and get his money back. So some people thought he was a con artist. I don't know. It's in the court papers. But something that he just said made Ashley nudge her lawyer. So let's just take that back a second. So Doug's looking for investors to fund this ballet. It wasn't his money. And a lot of people have speculated pre-trial that she was a gold digger. She was using him for his money to start this ballet company. And we can see here now through Tommie's testimony that he had benefactors and donors. Taking it back a second. Personal injury lawyer has entered the chat.
Major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time. And in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank. So he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
So while this ballet was in development or launching, did Ashley ultimately become pregnant? I know you said she became pregnant several months later, but I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yes, ma'am. So in February of 2017 are the records and what they told me about founding it. I met her in maybe a month or two after that on that Charleston overnight. They held the first ballet event, and I was invited in May of 2017. Once again, single parent, I wasn't able to attend. She got pregnant in July, and we talked about that multiple times. And the next month in August was the large launch, which me, my business partners, my veteran friends, supporters of Doug all went to Charleston for that major launch in August. It was at a place, I'm sorry.
And at that time, was Ashley pregnant in August?
She was pregnant. I don't remember if she knew or not. It was
Okay.
1 month after the pregnancy was Emerson was conceived.
And at some point, did Ashley move away from the South Carolina home?
Yes, ma'am. We had the August ballet big launch. 2 weeks later, Doug moved Ashley down to Ashley's mother's home in Lakewood Ranch. Drove down one day, dropped her off, and drove back the next day. That's late August.
And what was the understanding, what was Ashley's understanding of why she was moving and what was going on?
In text conversations and personal conversations with Ashley.
Defendant's statement.
It's going to be the defendant's statements.
Can we approach for a moment?
Yes.
Yeah, approach, because, there's issues and different jurisdictions handle statements from deceased people in different ways. So it'll be interesting what the judge is going to allow in. And Ashley seems to be very involved in her defense, listening intently, giving notes to her attorney. Somebody asked who's the guy with the legal pad. So there was a pretrial motion where the defense asked to have their tech guy or AV squad guy, who's also the paralegal, sit at the table with the defense attorney, and the judge denied it. We had the same thing happen in the Karen Reed case. And if you recall, those were some pretty testy arguments during that case. The judge did not want to allow Craig Bates, who came on my channel after the trial was over, to sit at the defense table, arguing that it was too small for him to be able to fit there. So they made him sit at a little table behind them. This is the same issue. Judge said, no, he can't sit at your table, although I don't know how big the table is. I haven't really noticed. But they did say he could sit at a small table behind the defense table, because the attorney said, look, I'm 70 something years old. I can't handle all of the exhibits and putting them up on the screen. I need him with me. I need him doing that for me. And finally, he allowed him to have a small table, what the judge referred to as a TV tray table. And that was I said that first when we were talking about Karen Reed.
Ashley went, okay, so I believe.
So he is there with his TV tray table. He's the paralegal for the defense, and he's also in charge of their tech. And they actually gave him also an HDMI cable. That was a big deal too.
I believe we were talking about the reason that Ashley went to Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your discussions with Ashley, either text or in person or on the telephone, did she indicate to you that she was going to Florida because she was sick? And
That was the
Okay, I'm sorry. You're right, Paige. I think I misspoke. These were statements that the defendant said. I guess they wanted to argue about that it's hearsay, but she does have the opportunity to testify, so she doesn't have to. And the jury's not supposed to infer any negative from the fact that she may not testify. But in my opinion, I think she has to claim self-defense. But we'll see how this goes. Thanks, Paige, for pointing that out.
initial indication. Yes, ma'am.
And her mother could better take care of her.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
In particular on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love. Both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
In front of you. I think, didn't he just say he only saw her twice during the 4 years that they were married? Did I miss something? Did he see her more than twice? Did he see them together more than twice in 4 years? Okay.
I have no further questions.
Cross. Mr. Taylor, as I've said before, you're free to use the podium if you prefer to cross from table. Yes, sir.
Morning, Mr. Benefield.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
You were a naval pilot, correct?
Navy pilot, yes, sir.
I think you mentioned the training that you had briefly, correct?
I went through extensive training all my 30-year career, yes, sir.
Okay. Some of that training included close quarters combat, did it not?
No, sir, never.
No hand-to-hand
No,
training at all?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a conversation where you related information about close quarters combat?
Yes, sir. I was in charge. I was the senior.
Do you remember that conversation?
Which one, sir? I don't know which
about
one you're
close
speaking
quarters combat?
If it was in perspective of me running security and self-defense training for my airline, not the Navy.
You received no such training in the Navy?
No, sir, never.
Did Doug admit to you firing the gun in the kitchen of their home?
Can we approach?
Yes.
This is not a public defender. Melinder. It is not. Wants to know if he admitted to him that he fired a gun into the ceiling in his home. He opened the door with his naval training about hand-to-hand combat, so that was interesting to me. So the beauty of being behind is that we can skip through this stuff.
Mr. Benefield, do you recall that Ashley had left your cousin Doug in the fall of 2017,
Yes, sir.
specifically September 18th of 2017?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that date and the events.
Do you recall writing to Ashley Benefield in a text in May of 2018, I'm a fan of yours?
Oh, he's a fan of hers.
It's his.
It's his statement. How's that hearsay? May of 2017, I'm a fan of yours. That's interesting. It's his statement. Show him the receipts. Neil, that's Neil Taylor. Yeah, somebody said this lawyer's been around the block or two. He's seasoned. He is. Oh, now I'm dying to know what that text message said that he sent to Ashley. Do 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 do. For those of you just joining, this is cousin Tommy, Doug Benefield's cousin, who is the family spokesperson. He's done a lot of pretrial interviews on media.
So, Mr. Benefield, following Ashley's leaving your cousin Doug in September 18th of 2017, were you a fan of Ashley Benefield's in May of 2018?
I don't remember specifically that word, but it may have been in our lengthy phone calls and text messages from January through June, possibly.
You expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And
Okay, that's huge. That's huge. So 8 months after Ashley left his cousin Doug that he claims to be so tight with that Doug would never harm a fly, he's apparently texting with Ashley supportive things that he was a fan of her and believed her and was on her side of this story. I just want to hear his exact words again. Expressing support for her side of the story. Okay, hold on.
I don't remember specifically that word, but it may have been in our lengthy phone calls and text messages from January through June, possibly.
you expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And did you tell her, in fact, at one point, she married the wrong Benefield?
Sustained.
Oh my. Oh my. Did you tell her at one point she married the wrong Benefield? He's hitting on her. He said earlier he was a single parent. He was hitting on her. You married the wrong Benefield. And then what happened? She rebuffed him. She ghosted him. And now his testimony could be biased because she didn't want to be with him. This is very interesting. This is getting interesting, my friends. Say you.
Did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield?
Relevance.
Relevance, bias.
Approach.
I don't know. What say you, my friends? You married the wrong Benefield. Wow, didn't we hear that in the Karen Reed trial too? At some point, I don't know if it ever came out during the trial, but the I married the wrong sister thing coming from perhaps one of the people in the house, 34 Fairview, or one of the brothers of the person in the house. I married the wrong sister. Vaguely remember something like that. He's hurt because she rejected him, says Sydney. Remember, this is the guy who's been speaking out to the media on behalf of the family for the almost 4 years.
Overruled.
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 Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, after expressing your support for Ms. Benefield in 2018, several months after she left your cousin Doug. By the way, do you know why she left your cousin Doug?
The initial reason or the second reason, sir?
Do you know the reasons that Ashley Benefield gave your cousin Doug as to why she left him?
Objection, hearsay.
I'm going to need the source. Is this from,
Well, I'm not going to ask.
is it being offered for the truth? I mean,
Yeah, it's not being offered for the truth, and I'm not going to go into the substance. I just want to know if this witness knows.
overruled.
Okay. I'm
You
gonna
can
just
answer.
take a
Did
quick,
Doug-
give you a quick lesson in hearsay. Hearsay is something that is offered. It's an out of court statement that is offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. He's not offering this for its truth. He just wants to know what he knows about the reason for her initially leaving him, and the objection is overruled.
Share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared two different reasons.
Yeah, all right. So now you express several months following that you're a fan of hers. And do you also not say to her that she married the wrong Benefield?
I don't remember that specific text in the 6 months of open communication between she and I.
All right. Let me see if I can refresh your recollection. Mr. Benefield.
Objection.
Overruled.
Higgins 2.0.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Maybe see what you're showing.
Sure.
That's right, Unetti Spaghetti, because
I'm
the
going to show
defense,
you a document.
Unetti Spaghetti, almost 4 years. This is the first time hearing about it. Yep. Because the defense kept these things close to the vest. They were saving these nuggets for cross-examination of Tommy, who's been out there spewing his story since September 2020, I believe. Okay, here we go.
Why don't you take a moment and look at it and tell us if that refreshes your recollection as to whether or not you suggested to Miss Benefield she'd married the wrong Benefield.
That's right, Iceman. There is no bro code. So his cousin's been trying to get with
It does
Ashley.
not say anything about marrying the wrong Benefield.
Does it say,
Maybe, she-
Hold on.
maybe he gave him the wrong
Sir,
page.
is that document, without identifying it, we need to lay the predicate.
Mr. Benefield, is that document reflective of the communication that you shared with Miss Benefield?
I believe it's correct and unaltered.
All right. And it's between you and Miss Benefield, is
Yes,
it
sir.
not?
Yes, sir.
And it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, may I approach?
Yes.
13 Kings, thank you. He does sound like Larry King, the attorney. I was trying to place his voice. His voice has a lot of gravitas.
Do you say thank you, Ron
Objection.
Benefield?
Yeah, approach, Mr. Taylor. State.
Did you say married the wrong Ben? I'm guessing this is the printout of his text messages because he said, oh, yeah, though, it doesn't seem to be altered. But again, if it's being used to refresh his recollection or impeach him, it's allowed to look at it. Daria, I think, is ahead and says incoming KG responses. So let's look for the KG responses. Thank you. I don't mind those kind of spoilers if you just want to tell us to look out for something. Because we are a bit behind. We started late today so that we could fast forward through as such times like these.
Does the document I've shown you, Mr. Benefield, refresh your recollection of that particular exchange?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you tell us your recollection having been refreshed, whether or not tell us what your response was to Ashley's text?
This is 6 months, and you want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your,
line? Is that
Mr.
what correct,
Benefield,
Mr. Taylor?
just
Yes.
tell us what your response was to Ashley's text, your recollection having been refreshed.
He doesn't want to say it. Say it, say it, say it.
Ashley says in the text,
Mr. Benefield,
Sustained.
please tell us what your response to Miss Benefield's text was now that your recollection has been refreshed.
there are multiple on the page, sir.
Mr. Benefield, I think you know what I'm referring to.
Look at
Would
her
you please
face.
answer my question?
I would like to answer it as it pertains to what she said.
I didn't ask you what she said, Mr. Benefield. I asked you to please tell us your recollection having been refreshed, what you said.
Would you like me to read
And
that
Judge, I would
bubble?
object. We do not need to be reading from this document.
No, but he needs to say those words,
Stephanie, would you
sir.
please take the jury into the jury room? If you could give us 5 minutes, I'd appreciate
Good.
it.
Get the jury
Remember,
out.
please
Because you
don't-
know what? Cousin Tommy needs to answer for that. He needs to answer that question. He doesn't get to phrase the question. That's the attorney's job. And you know what? I like this Neil Taylor's demeanor. He's calm. He's cool. He's collected. He's not attacking him. He is with surgical precision. I like to say, I said this about Alan Jackson and David Yannetti. Not only did they go to law school, they went to dental school too, because sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get an answer out of a witness. And this is like pulling teeth. All right. He sent the jury out. He said, please don't do any research. Please don't look at your phones and watch anybody on YouTube. They can't publish the page yet because his recollection was refreshed. And so he now has to say what he said. And they can't use it.
Leave the paper here.
Yes, sir, leave that there.
Yes, sir.
And they're sending him out. And the prosecutor's like, I don't want this in. It hurts my case.
Began this,
Here we go.
when we began this portion of the discussion, the question was, did you tell Ms. Benefield that she married the wrong person,
The wrong
The
wrong
wrong
Benefield.
the wrong Benefield? And I sustained that as hearsay with no exception. I found that it didn't provide impeachment of any prior inconsistent statement. What I did allow was him to testify as to his then existing mental, physical, or emotional conditions or feelings, with the question being, did you feel that she had married the wrong Benefield? There was then,
If you guys want special emojis, thanks, Amanda. We do special emojis based on the trial for members. So if you would like special emojis, just put in there what you like. Already I can see like a ballerina. But this shows bias, in my opinion. He was hitting on her. He wanted to be with her. And then at some point he turned on her, and now he's the star witness for the prosecution because he's going to make the jury think that their relationship was completely fine. Every time Ashley and Doug were with him, there were no issues. Doug was a great guy. He didn't do anything wrong. He never hurt her. He never abused her. I think it should come in.
the attempt to use these text messages that I still have not seen. I don't know what the substance of them was.
Show them to him.
But
that's why she has redirect. That's why she can redirect him. That's why she can redirect him. Come on, Neil Taylor. See if you can get those into evidence. See if you can get the text messages so that your tech guy who's sitting at the little tray table can put them up on the screen for us. We want to see them. Show them to the judge.
where we were was my understanding, and what I heard was the defense was attempting to refresh the witness's recollection. And what I have said is it sounded like it started to morph into some mix of impeachment and refreshing recollection and some elements of introducing a past recollection recorded. And that's where we're at. So, state your objection.
My objection, first of all, is the predicate has been laid to refresh recollection. But then the witness has not been asked what his recollection is, other than to read it off of the paper.
No, that's not true.
Past recollection in either
He's like,
past
no.
reported or something of that nature. I think we're commingling the two different things. And if this witness needs to be asked, if it refreshes his recollection, then he can be asked that question without reading the document. I would object to any reading of the document because it is extrinsic evidence if it's being used for impeachment. I do not believe his state of mind is relevant to a material issue in this case. I think the defense is trying to say that it goes to bias, but I'm not quite sure how that fits into it. So my objection would be it's improper refreshing recollection. It's improper impeachment. It's also improper prior reported recollection, and I would object to that being testified about.
Your response?
Yes. So as succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to. So I am trying to impugn his credibility after listening to everything that he had to say to set up the state's position about how this relationship was so lovey-dovey between Miss Benefield and Douglas Benefield, and what a wonderful relationship it was. Here, we now have this witness very begrudgingly admitting that after Miss Benefield leaves Douglas Benefield, and she leaves the letter, which I know the court has seen because I attached it as an earlier exhibit to a motion, he's still supporting her. And he's not only supporting her, but he's telling her she married the wrong Benefield. In my world, Your Honor, based upon the rules of evidence, I am entitled to go after his credibility, which he has put in question by virtue of taking the witness stand and becoming a witness. I did it the way the court wanted. I asked the magic question, does this refresh your recollection? He said it did. Now I want him to tell me, in response to my question, did you tell Miss Benefield she married the wrong Benefield? And he cannot bring himself to acknowledge it. He wants to talk about anything else but that. And I think, Your Honor, anything that I'm capable of showing where this witness, Doug Benefield's loving cousin, Tommy Benefield, where this witness showed his support for Ashley Benefield after she left Douglas Benefield, goes directly to his credibility. You can't get up there and testify to all of these things about how wonderful this relationship was, and then on cross-examination have to acknowledge that you were still saying you're a fan of Miss Benefield's after she leaves them, knowing the reasons she left them. I intentionally didn't go into the reasons to try to be straight with the court, but now I'm attempting to impugn his credibility. And he knows it, Judge. He's looking at me like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, and he started to become combative. This is very interesting, Daria. Is it Daria or Darla? I think it's Daria. Daria says, actually, Tommy ended up marrying someone who's 30 years younger than him in April of 2019. Was he dating his wife in May of 2018 and is concerned about how it looks? That is so interesting, Daria. And I don't know if that's true, but for purposes of this discussion, I'm going to take your word for it. Is it okay? Is it to help Doug and avoid bias? Interesting.
Allow you to respond. I previously mentioned about confining arguments to legal and factual bases. I am also going to direct both sides to refrain from vituperative ad hominem attacks. I don't think we need to resort to name calling. I think it's inappropriate and unprofessional to refer to a witness as a creep.
Oh, he is a creep, though.
With that said, go ahead for your response.
Okay. Well, that was fair. That was fair. He says, ad hominem attacks aren't good. And I'm like, who? I thought the attorneys said something about each other, but apparently he didn't like that Mr. Taylor Esquire called Tommy a creep. Okay, fair enough. But what he said was kind of creepy, to be honest.
The first thing, Judge, I don't know if you have the copy of the text message up there. The defense could give it to you. Nowhere in there does it say she married the wrong Benefield. That is not what it said, first of all. And second of all, Tommy Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that Tommy Benefield saw them acting loving to each other. If that wants to be impeached or explored, then ask Mr. Benefield if he saw them after that or knew that they were not loving and having that type of relationship.
Stop. Just stop. It puts all of his testimony in question. If he was hitting on his cousin's wife after she left his cousin that he claims to be so close to, and he's supposed to be abiding by the bro code where you don't go after your cousin's wife or estranged wife. It puts all of his testimony at issue. Because if she ghosted him after that, that has a reason, that gives a reason for him to now be sort of sugarcoating things. Wow.
I don't understand the relevance of these types of conversations. I think the defense tends to say everything is about bias, but it has to comport with the rules of evidence. And I would say that this does not.
No, the witness
Fine.
left
Thank
the
you
room.
both very much. So my ruling earlier was that these statements by Mr. Benefield towards the defendant were hearsay. I wasn't aware of any exception that would allow them. They appear to be offered for the truth of the matter that is asserted. So I didn't allow them on that grounds. What I allowed was the defense to ask, because there had been testimony by TOMMIE Benefield that they were always respectful to each other. You never saw anything except care for each other, and they were in love both ways. I think it is an impeachable question to ask, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield?
Yes.
But it's not what he wrote. It's what he felt. That's where you're mixing apples and oranges, the defense is. The question that was presented to me was, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? He can answer yes or no. If there's then some extrinsic evidence that may impeach him on that point, I would then have to make a determination is that extrinsic evidence admissible or not? Because if it's a collateral matter that's not material, then the as you well know, Mr. Taylor, you get the answer you get. Where we had an additional part of this analysis was the fact that there was a demonstrated lack of memory, because the answer was, I don't know, as opposed to, no, I didn't say that, or yes, I didn't feel that, yes, I did feel that. So then the path we started on was refreshing recollection. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned pre-trial, I expect attorneys to know the differences between impeachment by a prior inconsistent statement. That's one path. Refreshing recollection is a second path, and introduction of past recollection recorded, which is a separate path. And the reason I'm sustaining the objection is because it started off with refreshing. Does it refresh your memory? And then we got right back into the documents themselves, which I've already ruled were hearsay. So it's for impeachment purposes only. You can ask him about I allowed you to ask what his feelings were, but not to get into these documents themselves.
But if he says that wasn't his feeling,
I don't know how to say it any
can he impeach him then?
more clear than that.
So,
If you're refreshing his recollection, then we're going to take that path.
yes, I believe I did that. I believe I refreshed his recollection and he acknowledged that. So then my question was,
What did you say? And that gets back to the documents. If he says his memory is refreshed, you take the document back, or whatever the thing is that you use to refresh recollection is to be retrieved. And then the person testifies from their own personal knowledge.
so once he said that he recalls, I then asked him if he said that you married the wrong Benefield. That's what I said. I will be happy to go through that again, Your Honor. Now, did I leave the document there when I asked him that? Yes. I didn't feel it was necessary to take the document back, but after he acknowledged that his memory was refreshed, I asked him, did you say that she married the wrong Benefield? And that's where we were when Your Honor sent the jury out. He was trying to come to terms with how he was going to answer that.
That's right. He's right. All right, Scott, coming in with the song choices.
The other text, Your Honor, is just indicative of continued support for Miss Benefield.
Yeah. Goes to bias. Ding, 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 ding. Bridget says he wanted her and he didn't get her. Then he turns against her, and that shows his bias. Right? The jury heard. I mean, the jury's already heard it more than once.
Sir, this doesn't say what you're asking him.
What does it say? I love that they're not doing this at sidebars so we can actually hear it.
Thank you, wrong Benefield. Miss Benefield says, that's very cool. You should be so proud of what you were doing. His response is, thank you, wrong Benefield. What that means, Your Honor, what that suggests is, thank you, you should have been with me.
Sustained.
I assure you, Judge, that any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does not match what you're asking, sir. All right, are we ready to bring the jury back in? Do you want to treat this as your mid-morning break? You guys can take 5 minutes.
Can I take 5 minutes?
Hold on. I want to read back the text message exchange that he just read and tell me what you think of it, because I'm a little confused.
Is your response says, that's very cool. You should be Benefield. Thank you, wrong Benefield. Miss Benefield says, that's very cool. You should be so proud of what you were doing. His response is, thank you, wrong Benefield. What that means, Your Honor, what that suggests is, thank you, you should have been with me.
Sustained.
I assure you, Judge, that any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does.
Okay. She said, I don't know if what she said was before or after. She said, that's very cool. That's very cool. You should be proud of what you're doing. And he said, thank you, wrong Benefield. I need some more context around it. But it's being sustained. Although the jury saw his face when she said, when he asked him, did you think that she married the wrong Benefield? The jury saw his face. So there's no hiding that, because in this courtroom, they can see the jury's faces.
Say in your text messages, sustain.
Oh.
And then, so
What did you
it's my,
Any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does not match what you're asking, sir. All right, are we ready to bring the jury back in? Do you want to treat this as your mid-morning break? You guys can take 5 minutes.
can I take 5 minutes, please?
All right, am I going to be allowed to get an answer from him?
I've sustained the objection.
And
All right, so we'll take,
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify your ruling. It's my understanding that you said he could ask how he felt.
correct. The last objection was the questions were going to, what did you write? What did you say in your text messages? Sustain.
And then, so, okay, thank you.
Okay, so he's going to be allowed to say, did that refresh your recollection about how you felt about whether she married the wrong Benefield? So that's going to be interesting. Now we can skip through this brief recess. That's always fun to do. While we do that, let's just go to the chat for a minute. We'll just fast forward ourselves right up to where they come back, which is right around here.
Defense.
Thank you, On Top, for the super sticker. And thank you, Donna Hallman, for your super sticker. Magnolia Gypsy. Begin the playlist with Tim McGraw's cover of Tiny Dancer. That's a good one. Thanks for the 5, Magnolia Gypsy. Thank you, Susan. So very happy you're covering this trial. You are the cherry on top that makes watching trials all the more enjoyable. Oh, I thank you so much for that. And Nikki Bettman, welcome, is a new member. Neil Campbell, I'm going to address this later about Marsha Thompson, and I'm going to show you the reading of the verdict because I did watch that and I was overcome with emotion. Michelle Monahan, Michelle, thanks for the 5. I love you, Melanie. Channel's my go-to. I love when Mark Bettero's on with you. More comments later. Thank you. Jenny Lou, thank you. And Kat loves Catskills. Thank you so much for becoming new members. Cam, thanks for the 5. I promise this is going to be hard for any abuse survivors. This prosecution will seem to victim blame the whole time. Just a fair warning. Thanks, Cam. Jay-Z became a new member, and Lori Live 360 gifted 5 memberships. And thank you because you're always so kind and generous to this channel. And to those of you who are randomly gifted memberships, welcome. I think you're going to like it here. And if you don't, well, there's lots of other channels. Kimmy, thank you so much for coming in from Canada. Keep in mind, she could be the mental abuser. We absolutely will keep that in mind. On top says, I'm a power lifter and I comp he's on roids 100%. Thanks for your opinion on that. On top so much. Usually just put in the super sticker without a comment. So thank you for commenting. Sarah Breek, Pre Creative, appreciate you. She says, keep on trucking. Keep on trucking. Thank you. I'm with you, Melanie, 100% from Roma Victorio. Thank you. Amonti, thank you so much for your super chat. I'm glad that you offer your opinion and that you are not, as so many others do, hold back and that you are not afraid to speak your mind about cases. Thank you. Thank you for appreciating that. For some people, it's not their thing, which is why I invite them to leave or go somewhere else because I'm not going to change because of a few people that are unhappy in the chat. If you're unhappy, there's plenty of places you can watch your coverage. Thanks On Top for being on top of the super sticker. Mike Carlson, welcome to membership. Welsh Girl says, thank you for being our safe space, Melanie. Thank you so much for the super chat. And that we are. And if you're new here, feel free to chat with some like-minded folk in the chat. They will welcome you with open arms. Melinder says, can we take a moment to praise objection grounds? Yes. Thank you, because we did not have that in the Karen Reed case. They were not allowed to state grounds for objections. Everything had to be done sidebar. Jewel the Cat, thanks for becoming a new member, as well as Welsh Girl 74. Welcome. Susan Cecil says, Melanie, a pilot will likely have hotel rewards that would give him upgrades anytime a room is available. Retired road warrior here. Congrats on your retirement, Suzanne, and thanks for the super chat. Chloe Albert's Revenge is here. Welcome. Thanks for the deuce. He's getting higgy with it, as in Brian Higgins. Oh, I knew exactly what you mean. Thank you, Cam, for your 5. His style is very unique and he's very likable. He knows when to be stern and when to be calm. He knows how to get his point across, right? And that comes with age and experience. He's had over 400 felony trials, I think. And I like his demeanor. He's in his 70s. He told us that during his motion when he wanted the paralegal to be able to sit with him. He said, I'm in my 70s. I can't manage all this technology. Let's see. Mel, did Taylor show too much attitude? In my opinion, I didn't think so. That's Neil Taylor you're talking about, Lizzie. But you guys let me know what you think. That was at 12:08. What time was that? That was just now. I don't think he showed too much attitude. You mean toward the judge? I don't think so. I don't think he was disrespectful toward the witness. I don't think he was disrespectful. He has a lot of gravitas when he's getting his points across. I can say that watching the Karen Reed trial, that Alan Jackson at a lot of times was more so with the judge and with witnesses than Mr. Taylor, in my opinion. Hannah Laura Williams, thank you so much. Is the Rage Crochet Club back? I'm already busy. Yes, we have a Rage Crochet Club here for those of you that are new. And many of our members in the Rage Crochet Club are rage crocheting while they're watching the trial. And they do create a lot of beautiful things during the course of these trials that we watch together. Felipe, dumb question here. Sorry. No, this is not a dumb question at all. There are no dumb questions. Is she required to be in court? It looks like she could be re-traumatized. Love this channel. Thank you from Brazil. Thank you for tuning in from Brazil. We have a worldwide audience. It depends on the state. For example, we watched the Adam Montgomery trial recently in New Hampshire. He did not show up to court at all for his entire trial, for the verdict. And I don't even remember if he showed up for his sentencing. And he was accused and convicted of taking the life of his beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Harmony. So she has the right to be there, but she is not mandated to be there. And I'm going to assume that Florida is the same. But most defendants want to be in court because it doesn't look good to the jury if you don't show up in court. It seems like maybe you don't care about your case. So I would always advise clients to be in court. But that is a great question. Thank you for that. All right, let's get back to Cousin Tommy after the break. Here we go.
All right. Bring them in. Oh, yeah, as you're going to bring them out, go and bring Mr. Benefield back in.
That's right, Lauren. Adam Montgomery did have to show up for the sentencing. That's what I thought. I didn't want to misspeak, so thank you for reminding me. That was a case out of New Hampshire, a very, very tragic case, Adam Montgomery. Somebody's got their papers really, really close to the mic, and it's really annoying, but it's not me. Oh, they can't find Tommy.
I will find them.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
It took a long time for him to get here earlier too, so we just need our witnesses ready to go.
They did a room for the state attorney's office witnesses down there.
Tommy's missing.
It's outside if you want to try to get them.
We lost Tommy. Tommy does not want to answer that question. He might be hiding.
Judge, that was why, because our witness room is.
All right, Mr. Benefield, come on back in. Yes, sir. Sir, as we took that break, did anybody attempt to approach you or speak with you about your testimony, the evidence, or this case? No, sir. Did you speak with anyone about your testimony, the questions asked of you, or the evidence of this case? No, sir. All right. Let's go and bring the jury in.
Thanks, Robin. I got your email. Thank you so much. Lizzie thinks Taylor's a star. Thanks, Lizzie, for tuning in from
You all
Australia.
go ahead and have a seat. Whenever you find your spots, just sit on down. All right, everyone gonna have a seat. Members of the jury, during that break, did anybody discuss the case amongst yourselves, discuss the case with anybody outside of the jury, or do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? Everybody says no. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir, I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep a communication open between us.
Oh, do you see what he just did there? He did admit that that's what he meant, but he didn't really feel it. He didn't really feel that she married the wrong brother, but that is what he meant. But he was just trying to keep communication open. Did everyone catch that? It's his cousin, JP Eagles. It's his cousin Tommy. Everybody catch that? Let's just hear that again. So he's admitting that that's what it meant, but he didn't really mean it. That was great. That was a great way to get it in. He side doored that in. Did you see it? Through the side door, my friends. It's great lawyering.
We were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir, I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep a communication open between us.
Now, we've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you aware of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir, at that time.
And did you express to Ms. Benefield
Objection.
You can ask the question.
your support of her after she obtained that domestic violence injunction?
Sustained.
Did you support Ms. Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
All right. For those of you who don't know, domestic violence injunction is the terminology that they use in South Carolina for an order of protection. So she was apparently seeking an order of protection against Doug in South Carolina in November of 2017. And her attorney is trying to get Doug's cousin to admit that he was supportive of her during that time.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
Show it to
May I
him.
approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is how you impeach a witness. Refresh his recollection.
Mr. Benefield, I'm going to show you a document, see if this refreshes your recollection.
Oh, he's not going to like this. This reminds me of Matt McCabe getting presented with those group text messages on the stand. Remember Matt McCabe? Timu John Travolta on the stand getting presented with those group text messages that he had no idea that the feds had and gave to the defense and the prosecution. Uh-oh, Tommie's getting a little red around the ears. Somebody says, is his wife in the court? Is Tommie's wife in the court? Because I'd be having papers drawn, just saying.
Does the areas that I check refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir. Those appear to be my statements.
All right, your recollection having been refreshed, Mr. Benefield, on November 4th, following the issuance of the domestic violence injunction to Ms. Benefield, did you express your support to her?
There are two problems with your question for me, sir. I'm going to ask you.
Would you answer my question, and then you can certainly feel free to explain it.
I was unaware of I believe I was unaware of any result of any pending case in South Carolina at the time I texted that.
I thought you just told us you were aware.
I became aware after the fact when the mutual protection order was entered. I found out about it after the fact, but I don't remember the date of that event as it relates to the November 4th.
You just opened the door on that,
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
and they don't look happy.
State, any redirect?
No.
Can this witness be released?
Yeah.
Oh boy, she
Mr. Taylor,
can't.
can this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
She could
Sir,
not
you are
get him out of there fast enough. Did you see the prosecutor's like, no, yes, get him out of here. He just called it a mutual order of protection. So he just got in there. I don't know if this was going to come in or not, but he opened the door on it. That the order of protection in South Carolina was granted. He just doesn't know what day it was. So he's not sure if he showed support for her before or after it was granted, but this is the big win for the defense, you guys, in my opinion.
Release from your subpoena, the prior restrictions that I placed upon you are removed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
State calls EVA Benefield.
Okay, this is going to be Doug Benefield's daughter. She was 15 at the time that they got married. This may be triggering for some. So I think she's 20. I think she's 20 now. They got married in 2016. Can't do the math. I think she's maybe, oh, so that makes her older than that. She's about 22, maybe. I think she just graduated college or something, because I think I did see that somewhere. And this is Doug's daughter. This is going to be sad.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Papers. What with the papers? Why do they got to do that with the
Morning, ma'am.
papers?
My name is Judge White. I'm presiding over the case. Just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from the microphone. It does adjust up, down, left, and right as you need it. Actually, you're just fine right there. I think that's close enough. Speak in a loud, clear voice, and we'll hear everything. Go ahead.
Please state your name.
EVA Benefield,
How do you spell your first name?
EVA,
And how old are you now?
23.
What was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
He was my father.
And who was your mother?
Renee Benefield,
And we heard from the previous witness, she died, unfortunately, at some time before this case, correct?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you first find out about someone named Ashley Benefield?
It was August of 2016, about 9 months after my mom passed.
Okay. And how did you find out about her?
My dad was on the phone when he picked me up from school, and he had his phone on speaker, and they mentioned him having a girlfriend, and if he was going to bring his girlfriend to a conference that they had that weekend.
And was that the first time you had any information that there might have been a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
At the time, were you upset with him about that?
No, I just told him that I trusted him, and if that's what made him happy, that I would be happy for him.
And about how long after that did you find out they were married?
It was 2 days after.
And how did you find out that they were married?
My dad came up into my room, and he said, "Eva, we need to have a chat downstairs with Ashley." She was at the house at the time, and I said, I don't think we need to. I understand that you're dating her and you're happy, but please just, give me my space a little bit. I don't want to have a conversation." And he said, "No, I think it's really important we do." And I said, "The only time that I would want to have a conversation with y'all is if you told me that you were going to propose." And when those words came out of my mouth, he told me that they were married.
Okay. So that.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to point out that this is a very, very traumatic thing for a 15-year-old girl to have to learn from her father that he got married behind her back. Her mom had just passed 9 months before. She's up. Clearly, she would have still been in one of the stages of grief, if not all of them. And that's a really crappy thing to do to your teenage daughter. I'm just saying. I hate all of this for her too, darling Deb. This breaks my heart.
How you found out they were married.
Yes.
Did Ashley eventually move into your house?
Yes.
And that was the house in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who all lived in the house? Just the three of you?
Yes.
How was their relationship?
Right. She's a year younger now than Ashley was when Ashley married her dad. So Ashley marries her dad, and Ashley's closer in age. She's only 9 years older than Eva and 30 years younger than Doug. And right now, Eva's only 1 year younger than Ashley was when Doug married her. Oof.
Together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA. Any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said it first.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role. And I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Okay.
Relevance.
Sustained.
And in Ashley's interactions with you, or interactions that she had or disagreements that she had with your father, how did you observe her to act?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a good question. Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum like. It was
Objection. Information.
Characterization.
I'm sorry.
Character evidence.
Overruled.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
she would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Okay. And did her reactions to you seem to be?
Has anyone ever been a step parent? It's not easy. And remember, this is, from the perception of a 15-year-old teenager.
Seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight?
No,
Verbally fight?
no,
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
no.
At least there's that.
How often would you say that Ashley and your father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. What would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
No further questions.
Cross.
Yes.
He's got to be careful. He's got to be really careful here. Mr. Taylor, please be really careful here. You have to treat her with kid gloves. The jury's not going to like it if you attack the decedent's daughter.
Good morning, Ms. Benefield.
Good morning.
We met previously at a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And I apologize to you for meeting you under these circumstances. I'm required to ask you a few questions based on the testimony that you've given us. you lived in the house at the time that Ashley and your father were first married.
Yes.
And you found out from your father that he had married Ashley when he introduced her to you.
It wasn't when I was first introduced. It was a day after.
So the day after, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So your mother had passed away approximately 8 months earlier,
9 months.
9 months earlier. And your father, with no advance knowledge, came and introduced you to his new wife.
Yes.
There was a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen in your home, correct?
Correct.
You know what that hole was, how it got there?
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
I don't know if it will or not.
I would prefer the question not be asked.
Well, of course you would prefer the question not be asked. Of course you would prefer the question not be asked if she knows how a bullet hole got in the ceiling, or he said hole, because Doug shot the ceiling.
Okay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
Okay, we can skip through this sidebar. It's heartbreaking that she's on the stand. It just makes me really sad.
So I think the question that was pending, Ms. Benefield, was, did you know how?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Ask it
Let me
another way.
back up. You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question.
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet. Yes, that was allowed in.
in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet
No.
outside to the drywall?
No.
Where was
It was near the kitchen.
it? Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
She knew. She
Was
knew.
that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
She knew. She knew there was a bullet in the ceiling. She knew there was a hole in the wall. It wasn't done in front of her. And in fact, the attorney just pointed out another hole in the wall in the closet that she probably didn't know about because she only knew about the one near the kitchen. Oh, sorry. Yes, Irene.
Did
Total Sydney Sweeney vibes.
you know that your father studied close quarters defense in the Navy?
Yes.
And tell us what close quarters defense comprises.
I'll allow it briefly so she can explain the basis of her knowledge.
Well, let me give the court a little better insight into this. Ms. Benefield, do you hold a black belt?
Yes.
And are you trained in defensive combat fighting?
Taekwondo.
Did you and your father often discuss different styles of defensive fighting?
We had the conversations when I was practicing when I was
Okay.
10.
And tell us were you trained in close quarters defense?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what it entails.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Okay. And it's the type of hand-to-hand combat where if confronted by a weapon, rather than turning and run, you're trained as to how to remove the weapon from the other person's hands.
Well, you're told to first ask for no conflict, and then if they proceed, yes.
Yeah. In other words, your objective is to take the weapon away.
If there's a weapon involved, yes.
Interesting.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Oh, she didn't
Give me
know.
1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
This is a terrible way for her to find out.
Was your dad Benefield? One last question, Ms. Benefield. Was your dad fixated with Ashley?
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you make a prior state? Whoops. Did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
Give me just a moment, Judge. Do you remember having your deposition taken?
Yes.
Proper impeachment rejection.
I need page and line,
Um,
and I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, I was just first asking her the question. Do you remember sitting for a deposition?
Yes.
Let me pass to you this document and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Approach.
Okay, Karen A says, unless a child actually witnessed something or the crime, they should never be put on the stand. Right. And it's the prosecutor, remember, that put her on the stand. And what did she really elicit from her that made it worth it? Did they send the jury out? Everybody stood up.
The word that you had used to refer to your dad's interest in Ashley was what?
When are you referencing?
In general. Was the word fixated? Was that the word you used?
Yes.
That's all.
Right, redirect.
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, but no, so you know. All right, Ms. Benefield, you've not been released from your subpoena, all right? And the rule of sequestration has been invoked. What that means is that you can't be in the courtroom anytime that there's testimony being given or evidence being presented. Because this is being shown on TV or the internet or something, you can't watch it outside of court. You can't watch what's going on inside of court. You can't be inside of court. You also may not discuss your testimony with any of the witnesses or any of the attorneys. Better practices don't talk about with anybody else. And none of the other witnesses nor the attorneys can talk with you about what's going on in court. Do you understand all of that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, you're not released from your subpoena, so you need to remain available.
Okay.
All right. But for now, you're excused.
Okay, that means that the defense might call her back to the
All
stand
right, members of the jury.
during their case in chief, and that's why she's not released from her subpoena. Therefore, she's not allowed to sit in the courtroom for any testimony.
All right, members of the jury, it's right about lunchtime, so let's go ahead and take our lunch break. It's just a couple of minutes before 12. In order to give you time to go and find what you want and everything, I'm going to ask you to be back in that jury assembly room downstairs at about 1:10. All right, so it'll give you about an hour and 10 minutes if you want to go somewhere. Certainly, there's plenty of places. If you haven't been in downtown Bradenton for a while, there's plenty of places up and down
He's
Main
sending them
Street,
downtown,
12th
recommending
Street,
places
all
for
the way down
lunch.
to the water. There's some places on 13th, also some places a little bit south.
It's nice of him.
Please leave your notes here. Do not discuss the case with anyone else outside of the jury or amongst yourselves. Please don't do any research on the people, places, things, or.
All right, let's see if they're going to do any argument outside the presence of the jury.
All right, same with you all. I don't foresee, I mean, you said so you know who's going to be coming in the afternoon. Are there any that, because this morning we had talked about 4 different people, so 2 have testified. Whenever we get back, if there's any particular issues about any folks in the afternoon, let me know.
Okay.
All right?
And we're behind, so I'm not sure exactly when those other people will be coming up,
All
so
right, we'll see you guys back here at 1:10.
thank you. And we anticipate the jury coming back in at 1:15.
Correct, exactly.
Okay. I'm going to set the afternoon stream for 1:15, but I want to talk about some things with you before we take the break. Let me just set that stream up, and then we'll redirect ourselves over there like a teleportation type thing. Let me check in with you. See how you doing over here. On top, did you knit a whole blankie for January Child Crochet Club, please? Or you'd like one? You'd like someone to make you one on top? Put your orders in now if anybody has any Rage Crochet things that they would like to share or sell or give away. On top is on top of wanting one. Steph says, I know dancers that were hired and they felt they were scammed and never danced or got pay. They were promised. That's so interesting to me, Steph. If you want to reach out to me by email, if one of the mods could put my email in the chat, I would love to hear about that. Fanbase@mlittlelaw.com. Thanks, Steph. I really would like, because the Vanity Fair article was all about the dancers and the issues that they had moving to Charleston. They were told to rehome in Charleston. Thanks, Jeannie B, for becoming a new member. Thanks, Kayla, for pointing this out. The state of Florida also prosecuted a woman who fired a warning shot into the ceiling to get her DV husband to back off. And she originally got sentenced to 10 years. There's no consistency in the law in Florida, the laws in Florida. And that's interesting too, because she did not call the police on her husband for shooting the gun into the ceiling, because as so many of you know who are survivors in the chat, a lot of times you do not want to get the police involved. You do not want to get this person that you still love in trouble. And I want to show you something that happened yesterday in a Palm Beach courtroom. This is the case of Marsha Thompson. She was on trial for shooting her husband while he lay underneath a blanket on the couch. The jury deliberated for 4.5 hours yesterday. This is in another part of Florida. This is in Palm Beach County. But I found this very compelling, and I wanted to just watch this verdict as it was read yesterday with you to just give you a little perspective into what happened in this trial yesterday. So if you haven't seen this, no spoilers. This was the jury was out for 4.5 hours, and this was yesterday. She was claiming self-defense. There was testimony that she had been abused for decades, over 10 years, something like 20 years emotionally, 10 years physically. And this was the verdict yesterday in Palm Beach County for Marsha Thompson. Let me know you could hear it.
Jury entering.
No spoilers. You've seen it. No spoilers.
Please be seated. Has the jury selected a foreperson?
Yes.
Juror number 7, are you the foreperson?
Yes, ma'am.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have.
Please fold the verdict in half, hand it to the deputy who will give it to me.
Interesting too. In Florida, the jury selects their own foreperson. It wasn't selected by the judge the way it was in Massachusetts that we recently just saw. And the judge doesn't even know who the foreperson is until they read the verdict. I found that very, very super interesting.
Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit Criminal Division and in 4 Palm Beach County, Florida, case number 19 CF 7582, Division U, State of Florida versus Marsha Thompson, verdict, not guilty.
Deputy, stop it! Stop it!
Oh, that just kind of like did something weird on its own. But I did not watch the whole trial. And so, it actually just cut off after that. They edited it because there was more to it than that. But they must have edited it down on Court TV, just the verdict. And that's what happened yesterday after 4.5 hours of deliberations. I did not watch the entire trial. If any of you did, let me know what you think. He was on the couch under a blanket, and she shot him a couple of times. And that was the verdict yesterday in Palm Beach County. So that was very interesting to me. And Neil Campbell put this in the chat earlier, or Nell or Neil. Marsha Thompson was acquitted yesterday for first murder. That was first-degree murder in Florida. She was a victim of coercive control for decades and shot her abuser. Not much coverage, but it was an incredible defense. Thank you, Neil. And I had this queued up, so I saved your comment for later. And Dickless Tracy also commented, said, Palm Beach County jury just found a defendant not guilty in a battered wife murder. She was a customs agent. She shot him 9 times while he was lying on the couch with no weapon. So there you go. You never know what a jury is going to do. And I don't know what Court TV's coverage of this case was before, but now it makes me curious to go back and watch. So I don't know. I found it interesting. I'm going to replay it. Hold on. I got to find it again. But I don't know why Court TV edited down the coverage of that verdict, because it was only like a 5-minute, maybe it was 5 minutes altogether, all total. We'll watch it one more time. So they cut it down to what? Oh, they cut it down to 2 minutes. Well, that's interesting. Okay, it's only 2 minutes, and that's why it jump cut to the next clip, which was the closing arguments in that case. This was yesterday. It's not 12 on this jury, it's only 6, CJ. In Ashley Benefield's trial, there's only 6 jurors and 3 alternates. Mel, did you watch the trial? Because honestly, I didn't watch the trial. I just got into it, and then all of a sudden there was a verdict. Thank you, Crystal. Welcome, Heather.
Please be seated. Has the jury selected a 4-person?
Yes.
Juror number 7, are you the 4-person?
Yes, ma'am.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have.
Please fold the verdict in half, hand it to the deputy, who will give it to me.
Maya, did she testify in her defense?
Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 15th Judicial Circuit Criminal Division, NN4, Palm Beach County, Florida, case number 19 CF 7582, Division U, State of Florida versus Marsha Thompson, verdict, not guilty.
Deputy, stop it! Stop it!
Got a little heated after that, and so I guess that's why they decided to clip it. But how could anybody not get emotional watching that trial? I mean, just watching that 2-minute clip. I'm not crying, you're crying. All right, mods, thanks for keeping it classy. We're going to teleport over to the afternoon stream. We're going to come back at 1:15. Everybody go get a break. Go get your crochet needles. Go get something to eat. Then we will be on real time. Thanks for keeping it classy, mods. We're going to teleport over to the 1:15 stream. Let me know that you made it over there carefully. And if you're not coming back, well, hey, as I always say to close every stream, I'll tell you now. Be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard, really. It is so not hard. Hit the like button on your way over on this stream, and then hit your the like button on the new stream as soon as you get in there, because it doesn't carry over. So I'll see you in 2 minutes. Let me know that you made it safely.